Hello everyone, in this session we'll be learning about Angular. This is the table of content which we'll be following over the videos to make clear about ourselves, about whole Angular project and how we can build a website easily in Angular. So the first question we should ask ourselves is why Angular before learning it. So Angular provides us component-based design. You make component once and you can use it anywhere in the site you want. When we make a website, we not just make one page. There are many pages like about section or in a shopping cart. In a shopping website, we have a shopping cart website and web page, and there are many other web pages inside our whole website. So it might be that we have a one section of a web page which is consistent in 2 or 3 web pages. And this is where we want a component based design so that we don't have to write this component which is repeating in all the web pages again and again. That's why the Angular provides us a solution to this using a component based design. And because of this component based design, we get a code consistency and reusability, which is a best practice when your project grows bigger and bigger. You don't want to rewrite the code which you have written already. It provides us a declarative UI, which means the Angular framework leverages HTML that when compared to JavaScript is a less complex language. And that's why it has the declarative UI. Angular has one special feature of command line interface, or in short CLI, which helps fasten up the process of making a project. With some small codes, we can generate a lot of file, and that helps our time in building the project. And at the end, the Angular is supported and developed by Google, which means there is a large community of people working on it and they are ready to help you if you're stuck in some problem. Let's see how we can install the Angular and start building our project in our local desktop. When you'll go to the nodejs.org/en/download website, you will see something like this, where you will have the download page. You can choose your OS and according to that, the application will be downloaded and then from that you can install the node into your local machine. So we were talking about Angular, but we are downloading Node. So what is this node? Node is something similar to what we were doing in Python with the help of Anaconda. There, Anaconda helped us to compile and to run our Python code. Here, we will be writing code in JavaScript. So Node is like that compiler which will read our JavaScript code, and according to that, it will give us output. If you see right below the download section, here it says it includes npm and then there's a version of the npm. This npm is nothing but it's a download package, node package manager, which is similar to pip in Python. It helps to manage all the libraries of the node. After you're done installation, you must verify your installation by running these two codes. As we just saw earlier, while installing Node, it also downloads npm. As it says, it's include npm. So to verify your installation, you must open a terminal For Mac users, you can open your terminal directly. For Windows users, you can open your PowerShell or in a similar way you used to run your Python commands. So I will now open my terminal and we'll see how we can verify our installation running these two codes. The first command is node space /v. I write node. Let me zoom in a bit. Okay, I think it's good enough now. Node dash v. V stands for version. And I got this version printed on my terminal. Now I'll see what's the version of npm. Npm space -v. I got the version of the npm again. So my installation in the machine is correct and it's showing the versions now. Let's go ahead with the slide. After we have installed the npm, now it is the time to install the Angular. And with the Angular, we will install the TypeScript language. We will use npm to install the Angular and the Angular command line interface. You can do that using npm install -g space @angular/CLI. Let me show you how you can do that in terminal. I'll write the same code here. Npm install -g stands for global, which means you will be able to access the Angular CLI from anywhere inside your machine. Angular/CLI. As I have already installed here, so I will stop the process as I have already installed this earlier. Now, as you can see, we are also installing a TypeScript with the help of npm here. TypeScript is a language which is built upon JavaScript. It encloses the JavaScript. In writing, it's similar to JavaScript, but it has more features than JavaScript. That's why we will install the TypeScript and we will use this TypeScript only to write the code for Angular. And we can install the TypeScript using npm install -g then space TypeScript. Let's have a small recap of our knowledge about JavaScript while learning the TypeScript. As the both languages are almost similar, that's why you will see similarity between the JavaScript while writing your TypeScript code. And we'll see how we can run our TypeScript code with the help of Node we installed earlier. Reasons we need to know about TypeScript is that because Angular framework needs TypeScript at the backend. We implement our logic with the help of TypeScript language for our web pages. And as it is designed and developed by Microsoft, so we need not to worry about the online community, which will help us if we face any error while learning the TypeScript. TypeScript is also an object-oriented programming language, which means it has classes and interfaces. How to implement and write these classes and interfaces we will study later in this video. As you can see within the picture here, the TypeScript encapsulates the JavaScript, which means every JavaScript code is actually a TypeScript code, but not the other way around. So there are new features in TypeScript which make it different from JavaScript. But uh, the syntax and the way we write the TypeScript is exactly similar to JavaScript. So every JavaScript code is a TypeScript code also, and that's why the Angular at the back uh, transpiles this TypeScript code into JavaScript so that our browser can understand this TypeScript code. And the last feature of TypeScript code is the compilation error it shows if you face any error while writing your code. While writing code in JavaScript, we used to see the errors in our console in our browser, where now we can directly see it on the terminal and it shows more beautifully rather than seeing the errors in our terminal in a browser. As we know, JavaScript code is also a TypeScript code. So now let's write a very simple JavaScript code inside our TypeScript file, and we'll see how we can make a TypeScript file and run it with the help of Node we installed earlier. Now I will open my text editor here. And I'll create a new file and I will name this as app. App is just the name of the file and the extension of this file should be .ts, which stands for TypeScript. Now I'll write the very simple JavaScript code, which is console.log. And within this console.log, I can give any string. Let's give hello world. Now save this file and we can open terminal outside also, but I will open a terminal within this code editor with the help of control plus tilde, and we have got this terminal here. Now to run our app.ts file or the ts file with the help of Node, we need to write node, then space, then the name of the file, which is app.ts. Now hit enter. We see the hello world being printed here. This is our TypeScript file running with the help of Node outside the browser. Earlier, we need to write the JavaScript code inside an HTML file, and then in the browser it used to run. Now we can write our JavaScript code and use Node to run that file independently. Let's see more about TypeScript, and along with that, we will review JavaScript. So let's look into different type of data types in TypeScript. We have a number type, we have a Boolean type, we have a string type, and at the end we have an any type. This is something different from plain JavaScript. And the way we define a variable in TypeScript is we write let, then a variable name, then a colon, then a variable type, then that is equals to some value which we want to give to this variable. We have used let keyword to define a variable. We can also use const and var keyword to define a variable. The const keyword, the let keyword, and the var keyword, all of them have different scopes, which means they're defined within different scope and the value vanishes after that scope ends. So we'll look into different scopes for const, let, and var keyword. Let's first try implementing some code with some basic data types in TypeScript. I'll open my code editor and we'll start looking at some code. So we have this plain file and let us write some variables inside it here. So the way we define a variable was we use a let keyword, then the name of the variable, let's say X, then we say number, and this is equals to 10. We can similarly give it some float value with the same variable type of number, and then we can say 10.2. So it doesn't matter if you give an integer or a float, if the number data type will take all of the values. Now let's try to give some string. Let's say the variable is s and it is of type string, and within the value we can give hello world. And we can also give it only a character. Both will be of type string only. Similarly, let's make a Boolean character or Boolean variable using Boolean, and that is equals to false. Last is our any data type, which we use to declare a variable first, and then we can assign whatever value later in code we want to give to that variable. Let's say we want to define let A be of type any. We don't need to give any value here, but if we want, we can give a value right away. So we have defined a variable, say any, a variable A of type any. Let's give it a value. Let's try to give it a string which says hello, and we will console.log this value A. Let's save this code and try to run it inside a terminal. So we are at the working directory. Now let's use our node.app.ts file, and when we'll hit enter, we'll see there is some error. This is because the app.ts file is a TypeScript file, while in the node we run the JavaScript code. Right now, the thing which we have written are outside that circle and actually falls into TypeScript zone. This is not a plain JavaScript. This is a TypeScript code. So first we need to convert this TypeScript code into a JavaScript code, which the Angular does it automatically. But if we want to do it manually, we can use command tsc, stands for TypeScript, then the name of the file app.ts. When we'll hit enter, it processes, and as you can see, there's a new file generated automatically which says app.js. Let's look into this file. Here we don't have a let keyword, and also we don't have any data type. So according to whatever the code we wrote in TypeScript, JavaScript is converted accordingly, which does the same job as we want it to be done in TypeScript. So when this TypeScript when this JavaScript code is generated using a TypeScript compiler TSC, now we can use our node, then give this JavaScript file, which is app.js, then hit enter. Now we can see our hello is being printed, which we wanted to be printed with this any type. So this any type is actually in the JavaScript was a variable A, then this A variable was given the string and normal console.log was uh, made here. So we write everything in TypeScript, and just have this in back of your mind that all of this is actually going to be converted into JavaScript code, which we need not to worry about, which the Angular does it automatically. But if we want to convert a code and run it manually, we can use tsc, then the name of the TypeScript file, and it will generate a JavaScript file of the same name, but with the extension .js. Let's close this file. And now what if we, as we know we can give any data type to this any a variable. So now let's give it a boolean which is true and try to print it again. Now let's do this whole thing again. First we convert this into an JavaScript file. Then we use Node to run that JavaScript file. So at first there's a hello and then there's a true printed. While if we have written a simple JavaScript code, we would have got an assertion error because they would have been of different type. Now let's look into app.js file. So it is similar to what we were trying to do. Now let's look into different type of data keywords which we saw earlier. So here altogether we were using let keyword. So now let's see what are difference between let, var and const keyword. So let's try to define a keyword using const and then we give a variable name, let's say X, let's say S only, and this is of type string, and the string is hello world. Now let's try to console.log the string, the S variable. Now we'll do that same process again. We get hello world printed. Now let's try to reassign this S string to some other string. Let's say S is equals to only hello, not the word. As you can see, we are getting some error here which says cannot assign to S because it is a constant. So with the help of this const keyword, you can only assign a value once and the values cannot be changed. Which this is how the const keyword works. Where if we define this using a let keyword, this would not have been any problem because we can redefine the value to a variable within the let keyword and also with the help of var keyword. So this is the difference between const and the let and var keyword. Now let's look into what is actually the difference between var keyword and a let keyword using the different type of scopes. So let's first write the function and we'll see if they differ inside a function or not. So to write a function, we used to write the function keyword, then the parentheses, then a curly bracket. If and right after the function keyword, we should give the name of the function. Let's say fun. Within the parentheses, we can give the parameters which we want our function to include. But right now we'll leave it and we'll define two variables, one with the help of let, another with the help of var. Let x equals to local, variable y is equals to local 2. If we try to console dot log them x comma y, we don't get any error. Now let's call this function, and now if we try to console.log these x and y values, we get error in both of them. Which says cannot find x, and for y it also says cannot find y. This is because the variables which were defined inside the function are only scoped inside the function definition. They cannot jump outside the function. So the let and var both follow the function scope. Now let's try our block scope. So what is a block scope? So block scope is nothing but anything which comes between these two curly brackets. So within the code, if we write some code within this parameter, within this curly brackets, they follow a block scope, and the variable and let uh, differs between the block scope. So let's write uh, maybe a variable x, which is a string local, and let y equals to be local. Now let's try to console.log the value of x and y. As we can see, there is no error on the x while there is an error on y, which says cannot find the name y. This is because the variable keyword, the var, defines the function, does not follow the block scope, while the let keyword follows the block scope. So anything defined within this block scope, within this curly brackets, it will be, the variable will be deleted once this curly bracket ends. While for the variable keyword, the var keyword, it does not follow the block scope. So this is difference between var and let keyword. Let's get back to our slide and we'll see, as we talked earlier, the block scope, the var does not follow the block scope. That's why there's a no there, while the let follows the block scope. That's why it's yes there. And as we saw earlier, we cannot reassign the const. That's why we have given no here, while we can reassign the let and the var keyword. Interfaces. Interfaces define properties, methods, and event which are the member of interfaces. Interfaces contain only the declaration of the member. So interfaces are something similar to classes, but we need not to define the whole hierarchical way we define a class. We can define interfaces quickly and we can use them as a data type like number and a string. And while calling an object of type of any interface type, we can use that keyword the way we define interface. So let's have an example to understand it better. Let's delete this and let's minimize this, and we'll follow the same code given on the slides. So first we use the interface keyword. Then here we give the name of the uh, interface name, which we'll be using while calling an object of type interface. So maybe I person, and this data type which you are defining in an interface contains two string and a one function. Let's say this data has first name, which is of type string. So we only define types here, and it also has a last name, which is also of type string. And it's also have a function which says say hi. And to define a type of function, there's a shortcut. We say parentheses, then equals to goes to some string. So it says say hi is a type function, uh, and the returning type is of type string. So here we have defined our interface. Now let's create a variable of this type of interface. So we can use a var keyword. Then we can say we want a variable name to be customer. Then here, as we earlier used to define, we need to give a data type, we can also use our interface. So I'll use I person, and now to define this customer, we need to give these three values. So to give these three values, we use a curly brackets, and here in the first name, now we need to give actually the first name. We can say it to be Tom. Then within the last name, we need to give the value of the last name. We can say Hanks. And then with the say hi, we can give a function which returns a type string, and this goes to, then we can return the string. The string can be hello. Now let's call this customer and see what we get. So let's use this console.log, and within this we use the variable console customer. Now let's try to run this code. First, we convert our code using tsc, then the name of the file app.ts. Then we use node to run the app.js file. So we can see here the first name, and there's a string after that which says Tom, and then there's a last name, and after that last name we have a string of Hank, and then in the say hi, it is a function which says say hi, and everything is inside a curly bracket, which means it's an object. So to access the first name, the last name, and the say hi function, we use dot, as we use to access an parameter inside an object. So we can use first name. Similarly, we can use last name. Now run our code again converting it to an app.js file, then use node on the app.js file. We got Tom Hank. Similarly, we can use say hi function, and to call a function, we use parentheses. Let's save this and run our code again. First converting into a JS file, then using that JS file, we run with the help of node, and the result we got hello, as this is we wanted to be returned while calling the say hi function. So this is how we define an interfaces in TypeScript. And later, this is how we create a variable using such particular interface. And after we create a variable, we can access the properties using dot and then the name of the property. Classes in TypeScript. As we know, classes are the uh, way in a code is something similar to what a car factory would be. Like in a car factory, they have all the information about making a car and all the tools to actually make a car, and that particular factory supplies a lot of cars. Similarly, the classes has all the information about the object we are trying to make, and from a particular class definition, we can create as many as object we want. Suppose we want to create a class of type employees. So all the information about employees needs to be structured there, about their salaries, about their employee code, about their names. Every detail about the employees should go inside this class. That makes our coding a bit easier, and it is a way we do object-oriented programming. So now let's write classes in TypeScript. This is our text editor, and let's write a very simple class using TypeScript. We'll first write the class keyword to define a class, and let's say it is of type. The name of the class is car, and if the way we define a property is We write the name of that property or the variable name, let's say price, and it is of type number. And then we write our constructor inside this class. To write a constructor, we use this constructor function with the parentheses and then a curly bracket. Within this constructor parentheses, all the object which all the values or the variables which we want to be inside our class while defining an object, all those values, all those parameters will actually come inside the constructor. So let's say we want to give the value of price while defining an object of type car. So we can do that using giving a variable inside our constructor. Let's say our price is in rupees and rupees is a variable and it is also of type number. Now to assign this parameter rupees to our price member, a member, we can use this keyword. And after this, we write the property which we want to assign this value. So this price is equals to rupees. So we use this keyword, then dot, then the name of the global parameter. We can use this keyword inside any method which we want to define inside our car class or any other classes, and then this dot the value of our uh, public variable which we have defined inside the car, and we can bind them or we can assign the value to this price which we'll get while the construction of an object. Now let's see how we can actually make a car object. We use a var keyword, then the name of the car can be Audi, and then this is equals to, we use a new keyword to specify that we are making a new object and it is of type car. And while giving a car in our constructor, we have given one parameter which is of type number. So we need to give it some number. Now this number goes into price and this is the price of the car. We have created Audi of type car, which we defined earlier. Now the way we access the members of this car class is using a dot, then the name of that property. Let's say we want to print the price of this Audi. We use Audi dot price. Now let's run our code using TypeScript app.ts first, then using Node to run our JavaScript code. We got the price of this Audi car. So this is how we write our classes in TypeScript. Let's get back to our slide. Here we have given another example of employee. You can look at the code. It's almost similar to what we are doing in the car class.